So I recently did a video on why I was shorting a number of stocks, and I'll include a link to that at the end of this video. Um, but this one specifically is going to focus on GM and why I'm very concerned about the future for GM, and why obviously I have an active short on this company. So first of all, I want to start by praising GM actually and saying the things that they're doing well. They are investing heavily in new technology. They are trying very hard to move into the electric vehicle market, even to the stage where they have gone to all their existing dealerships and effectively forced them to go electric. And by that, what they've done is they've said to them, either go you go on this training course and you go through all these kind of things, you have all this equipment ready for our electric vehicles, or we will buy out the franchise. Now, obviously that's a really good step, that they're moving in the right direction. My main concern with it really is kind of that it's a little bit too late, and it's also, my concern is the fact that a lot of their other parts of their movement is going to hinder this. I'll go into it in a little more detail as we go forward, but that's kind of like the one thing that they are doing really well. That's the positive from the business yeah, and that's pretty much it. That's the only good thing really that I can say about GM, which is kind of concerning, really. So another thing is the fact that Warren Buffett has recently further invested into GM, which is a little bit of a warning for you guys against me, because, Warren Buffett is an amazing investor and he's backing this company. And if he's backing this company, surely I shouldn't be shorting it, because that seems like a really silly thing to do. Someone did mention this to me a little while ago, and my argument back was, Warren Buffett also bought airlines not that long ago, and he lost a lot of money with it. So I'm not saying that Warren Buffett doesn't know what he's doing, because he clearly does. But I wouldn't necessarily say that everything that he does is gold. Okay, not everything that he does is perfect. So just because Warren has done something doesn't mean that that one specific thing is a good idea. Okay, and just the same as me, obviously, not everything I do is great. I make plenty of mistakes. You can check my trading history and see plenty of mistakes that I've made. So moving back to GM, we've got obviously Warren Buffett has come on board, and at a similar sort of time, GM have announced that they're now going to start doing insurance for their drivers, which baffled me a little bit, because of the fact that a few years back, Tesla said that they were going to start offering insurance. And Warren Buffett specifically, when asked about it, said that he thought this was a mistake on Tesla's part, and that insurance was a very complicated and expensive business to kind of be involved in, and that they shouldn't be doing it. And yet he seems to have stayed silent when GM have done it. Now, whether that's a case of he's staying silent because of the fact that he's now an investor and he doesn't really want to cause the stock price to tank shortly after he's invested in it, I don't know. But yeah, it does seem like a little bit of a double standard there, but maybe there's more of a reason to it, I don't know. So I just want to talk very quickly about GM's share price and its sales. Now, if you look at its share price, it is at almost an all-time high. It's only ever been as high as it is now for one very brief period, a few years back. And since that it kind of climbed to that all-time high, dropped down, stayed at a similar kind of level, and obviously, yeah, we've had the whole pandemic that caused it to drop even further, and it's climbed up a lot since then. So at the moment, what we are talking about is GM being worth more than it has been. And I've only really kind of checked the details back to 2008, because I think that's probably the kind of most relevant period of time. But it is worth more now than it has been throughout most of its history, apart from a very brief period of time. Which, considering if you then look at its sales throughout that period of time, and you look at its sales now, and you compare that to the previous few years, and you see the fact that its sales have been declining massively over the years. I mean, when you obviously we've had the whole global pandemic, which has caused a huge drop in sales this year. Completely understand that, and even though some car businesses, I won't mention any names, have managed to do particularly well in the current financial situation and global situation, GM has obviously clearly suffered during this. But let's kind of take that out of the equation. Let's just look at, say, 2019. So before the global pandemic, GM's sales were the lowest it has been, bar two occasions, since 2008. Okay, so in 2009, when the business kind of basically went bust and had to be bailed out by the government, their sales were very slightly lower than last year's sales. And then once again in 2015, they had very marginally lower sales than they do now. Now, obviously, this year, sales are rock bottom, but obviously maybe next year sales will be better than this year. But will they be better than last year? I don't think they will. I really don't see it. And going forward over the next 3-5 years, do we honestly think that GM sales are suddenly going to rocket back up to how they were, in years past, when they've had massively more sales than they have now? Again, people seem to think they will. People seem to think they're looking at these new EVs. I'm reading loads of reports, and people are looking at EVs that are coming out by GM, and they're going, this is going to put GM back on the map. GM's going to, have all these massive sales. And my concern is that maybe they will do well with these vehicles, but I'm not sure that they're going to kind of reach that previous level that they've had. I really don't think they're going to make as much money as they have been in previous years, when their share price was this level, when the company was worth how much it is now. So looking kind of forward at their vehicles and what they've announced. So they've announced their new battery technology. They're spending so much money on research and development, which in a way is absolutely great. They're spending loads of money on developing their new technology for the batteries, and it's their technology, so they own it, which again is amazing. They're going to be able to then sell this, and they've got a partnership with other car manufacturers so that they can kind of share technology, and they can sell them the battery technology as well, which again, this is all great stuff as far as the car company goes, as long as this all kind of pays off. Because at the end of the day, if what they end up with is a subpar technology, is battery technology that by the time they release it is already out of date, they're kind of screwed, because they've invested all this money into this technology. If this doesn't pay off for them, that's a huge loss. And not only is it that huge financial loss, but it then means that all of their vehicles are not going to sell anywhere near as well, because they won't have the technological advances that other cars in the market will have. They won't have the range that other vehicles will have. Now, obviously, everything here is speculation. Is GM going to be this amazing electric vehicle manufacturer that is going to, have these amazing sales and release all these amazing proprietary technology battery cars? Maybe they will. I don't see it. I really don't. I'm looking at other car technology companies. I'm looking at Tesla. I'm looking at NIO. And what I'm seeing is very different from what GM is actually coming out with. And I have a very big fear that what's going to happen is GM is going to go, yeah, we're going to get a few years down the line, they're going to kind of go, they're going to realize that the battery technology that they have is not going to be up to date. It's not going to be a viable option. In which case, I just don't see what they're going to do about it. Like, they're going to be completely screwed. Now, obviously, what GM have been doing is they've been trying to partner with as many different companies as they can. Obviously, we've had the Nikola partnership, which recently fell apart. Which, I mean, the thing is, the fact that they had this partnership with Nikola, to be honest, was a bad enough sign as it was. I think to an extent what they were kind of just trying to do is to use Nikola as best as they could. But I think the issue is what they ended up doing was just kind of tarring themselves and maybe allowing Nikola to kind of take them down the wrong path. Obviously, Nikola is very heavily focused on hydrogen. And GM does kind of have its own kind of roots in hydrogen as well. They've pushed hydrogen forward, or tried to push hydrogen forward a number of times. Now the issue is hydrogen as a vehicle for cars to drive with is not going to be a viable option. You've had this battle already between electric and hydrogen, and electric has already won. If hydrogen was going to win, it already would have done. People would have hydrogen cars over battery cars. The issue is, without huge infrastructure spending to get hydrogen out to all of the houses, and then to make hydrogen cheap enough, there's so much stopping hydrogen from being a viable option. And so all of the money and time that GM has pushed into hydrogen has been completely wasted. Now, obviously, the only possible benefit from hydrogen could be long-range vehicles. I don't think that will be the case, because I do think that Tesla and other battery companies are going to continue developing batteries and making them better, lighter, cheaper, which will then end up meaning that battery technology is better for long-range vehicles than hydrogen is. Obviously, that remains to be seen, so potentially long-range vehicles, trucks and lorries could benefit from hydrogen, but like I say, I just don't believe that will happen. So all that money, all that time that they've invested in hydrogen has been completely wasted. And I do think they still have an element of focus on hydrogen, which is going to continue to drain their funds as well. And all of this kind of goes hand in hand with the fact that the vehicles that GM are producing, the forward technology that they're coming up with, a lot of it is all very much, it's still in production. The Hummer and the vehicles that they're kind of coming out with at the end of, it's not coming out until the end of next year, so the end of 2021, and then another one coming out in early 2022. By which case, I do think that the technology in the vehicles, there's a good chance that it's going to be a bit out of date. Now, that's not going to stop them selling the vehicles. By all means, that they will sell. Of course, they will sell. It's GM. They've got a loyal fan base who are going to buy their vehicles. But what you do need to remember is this fan base is declining. We can see that from their sales. So GM really needs to bring new customers in. And I think that's what they're trying to do with this whole EV thing. But I think the issue is where they've not got that innovation. I don't think they're going to bring new customers in the way that they think and in the way that other investors are thinking. So that's my kind of biggest concern there, is their declining user base, their declining fan base, combined with the fact that I don't think that new customers are going to come to GM for the technology that they're bringing out. Now, obviously, the biggest expansion that they have had and they've been doing very well with is China. If you look at their kind of breakdown and any kind of good reviews on the stock, it's people saying, they are doing very well in China. They've released this new vehicle in China, in the world's biggest EV market, and they've released this EV that is outselling the Model 3. Now, on that basis, that sounds really promising, really great news. And I mean, when you look at the sales numbers as well, you're talking about nearly, it's not exactly, but just roughly twice the amount of cars have been sold of this new brand compared to the Model 3 for this particular given time period. But when you actually look at the vehicle, you realise that the vehicle that they're selling is like a very small, compact, miniature EV that looks a bit like, those you might know, the smart car. It's a small, like, little car, and in China, this car is going for $4,000 to $5,000. Obviously, it's in renminbi, not dollars, but their equivalent price. So when you consider that to the fact that a Tesla Model 3 is being sold for $40,000 to $50,000, you kind of expect them to have a lot more sales, don't you? Like, are you expecting a car that's valued at $4,000 to $5,000 to sell more than a car that's valued at $40,000 to $50,000? I should hope so, because if not, you're really doing something wrong. So there is no reason why GM shouldn't continue to grow this part of the market in China and continue to do well there. So we will see growth in that market, of course we will. I don't think it's going to continue at the same level. I think they've done particularly well with a new launch, but I think there'll be other people hot on their heels. There does seem to be quite a lot of very similar vehicles hitting the market. So I think GM has obviously kind of hit on a little bit of a niche market for now, but it won't be niche for very long. They may well contain a bit of the market speed there, but that'll soon fade. So I'm not really sure how much growth potential they will have there. I'm sure it will grow. I just don't think it will be by much, and I don't think it will grow for long. So we'll have to see how that goes. But even if it does grow, it's definitely not going to match the decline that they've faced for the rest of the world. And that's a really big problem. And finally, my other reason for shorting GM, I think everything I've talked about here should be reason enough. The fact that they are valued at their highest point that they have ever been valued, and their sales are at the lowest they've ever been. Like, if you, considering this year's sales are the lowest that they've ever been, I think obviously I'm sure, yes, there will be points like 1902 or something, whatever, they'll have lower sales, and yeah, okay, that was a bit sarcastic. At the end of the day, comparable sales, this will be the lowest year they have ever had, and their share price and valuation for the company is the highest that it's ever been. That to me says that this is a very overpriced stock. I also think that their sales are going to be much lower compared to how they have been over the past 5 years. So, and their profits as well, because they're putting so much money into this research and development, which I don't think is going to pay off. It's just going to really hit their bottom line as well. Sorry, I've just realised I did kind of diverge a bit there. So the big thing for me is the car industry as a whole. Now, if you're looking at the car market and the fact that there's been no real new players join the car market historically for a very long time, and when they do join, they pretty much don't last very long, and then they get bought up or they go bust. And the reason that most of them fail is the fact that they've not had this dealership. They've not got a strong network of dealerships around the world for people to sell their cars and for people to service their cars. Because at the end of the day, if you went out and you bought some random brand that you've never heard of because it looked really cool and you managed to find out about it, you then need to service it at your local service station, and they're not a specialist in that brand. You're not going to then buy the car, are you? Because you're not going to be able to service it. So that's why, and again, people finding out about that brand, if you don't have your cars in local service stations and dealerships around the country, people are not going to know about your brand, and therefore people won't buy your cars. And then the EV market started, and suddenly we don't actually need to have millions of service stations all over the country for people to quickly take their car in to every week to get it fixed. You don't have to go to a dealership to buy a car because you can do it online and you can have it delivered to your house. So suddenly all of these kind of previous barriers to entry that stopped the new cars from coming to market are starting to fade away. And then when you combine that with the fact that you've got companies that are making the battery technology that they will sell. So obviously we've talked about GM and they've got their skateboard technology batteries. There are other companies that are purely working on the EV battery technology to sell to other car manufacturers. Now, if you're a startup and you're like, right, okay, so I'll get my battery from this company and I'll get my tech stuff from this company, there's loads of companies you can outsource all the various elements to, and you can focus purely on the outside of the car, or you can focus purely, there's so much more scope and such lower level barriers of entry for new car makers to join the market, as we have seen with the huge amount of new EV companies that are coming to market. Now obviously a lot of them probably will go bust because there just won't be the market for so many different brands of vehicles. People aren't going to see so many different vehicles. For people to know about your brand, you need to be visible. So obviously the old guard, people like GM, Ford, Nissan, whoever, they're not going to disappear. Those brands will still exist. Whether they'll still be owned by these companies or whether these companies will have gone bust and sold the brand names on, I don't know. But these brand names will still exist in a few years' time. But the newer companies probably won't. Some of them will. And there may even be new ones that pop up. So those lower barriers of entry are going to mean far more competition for the likes of GM and Ford and all the other car manufacturers, because they won't have that edge anymore. And I've waffled on now for quite a while. That's the reason why I am short in GM. I've put a lot of thought into it, and the main reason why I'm shorting them is because I think they're a bad business, because I have to short something on eToro to try and reduce my volatility. 3, I do think that there is a bubble in the market. I am concerned that there could be a crash coming soon. And so I think having short positions within the portfolio could be beneficial for us going forward. They should definitely help to smooth out some of the volatility and reduce some of our risk. Generally speaking, I don't like having short positions, but like I say, obviously various situations kind of needs must at the moment, so that's why I've got them. I'm not telling you that you should go out and short this company. This is just my personal opinion, what I think is best for me. In fact, if you've got complete management of your own portfolio, I would actually say not to, because for me, shorting a stock is not the best allocation of your funds. If you've got the funds, I would just stick the money in a growth stock and leave it. But like I say, that's just me. This portfolio on eToro, I have to reduce volatility, and that is one way that I'm doing it. I think we will get good returns from this short, but it's probably not the most efficient allocation of funds for anyone else. Bearing that in mind, remember, it's not financial advice. Make sure you do your own research, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.